Okay. Hello. Yes. Wonderful, inspiring presentation to kick off the Saudi Society Clinical Chemistry annual meeting, and to inspired by the talk, is now we will start with the cornerstone of the laboratory medicine, the focus on a human capital to build the most important pillar of laboratory medicine. Without any further ado, I would like to introduce the first speaker to our session, Dr. Majda Shuktar. Dr. Majda Shuktar, she's now the current Director General of General Administration of Training and Education and Training Evaluation Commission. She was the Director General Assistant for Healthcare Accreditation Department at the Saudi Center for Accreditation of Healthcare Institution, SIBAHI. Actually, she was one of those founders and who wrote a lot of the standards of the laboratory with SIBAHI. And she held many executive positions in the private industry and government sector as well. And honestly speaking, to speak of Majda is one of those quality icons in the kingdom, and especially in the laboratory. She has a passion and heart for developing the laboratory quality, and we are delighted to have her in our annual meeting. And she will be talking about very important subject about human capital development cornerstone is everyday assignment. Dr. Majda, floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much. It's really great to be in this wonderful team as a clinical biochemistry. This is my first love as usual. And thank you, Dr. Nashat. I'm lucky really to have you to introduce me. Thank you very much for the organizing committee. So we will start as Dr. Nashat mentioned. This is the most important thing when we talk about the human capital. Um, and again, I think I'm going to take some of the notes taken from Dr. Graham's presentation about the development of a human capital. So I will start directly about what is our objective today. So we'll start with some definition about the human capital and the productivity and growth. Then we'll talk about the human capital investment. Uh, I'm sorry, and I just want to make sure that the slides is clear. And then the occupational standard, and this is maybe part from that I can build on what Dr. Graham said regarding the professional development, especially in the laboratory profession. So if we start talking about what is the human capital, so it's more than the human resource. It's actually the best definition I found it. It's the intangible assets or quality not listed on the company balance sheet, and it can be classified as the economic value of the worker's experience and skills. Usually, we find that the human capital is something that we added sometimes to the strategy or the support of the human capital rather than to be as part of the development of the strategy. And that's why we call it the intangible asset. Uh, so when we talk about intangible assets, what do we mean about this one? It's all the human that we have in our organization, but we can just define them by the knowledge, experience, skills, and social qualities. Those are the human capital that we need really to focus on and to consider them as an assets in the supporting the economic growth, not costly assets. So any development or any support that we will give it to the to this knowledge or skills of our staff, this is the real asset that it will not be actually vanish, it will not demolish, it will not be even I mean that we will not lose them even if they move to another organization, because we are talking about the growth of the economy. So other attributes embodied in the individual that are relevant to economic activity. So now when we are talking about this one, we are talking about the growth of our country, our economy. This is maybe a summary of many of the human capital's attributes or definitions. So it's more than knowledge and ability and skills. There are many if we want to list them, but we can at least take this as the core for the human capital. So as I mentioned before, so the key element is improving the assets of the organization. And when we talk about the asset, we don't talk about only the infrastructure or the computers or the equipment. We are talking about the human capital assets. And it's the sustainable competitive advantage and increase the employee efficiency. Just consider that this is the one that will really drive the growth of the organization, drive the competitivity of the organization, drive the efficiency of the staff in order that they can really produce and make their organization different or unique or have a different level among the other competitors, regardless that we are government or not government, healthcare provider or not. So this is how we are looking to it. When we talk why the human capital is important resources, as I mentioned before, because they are the rarest resources that we can find, especially when we talk about the professionals, the qualified, the skillful professionals, especially in our field, the clinical biochemistry or in healthcare in general. When we talk, again, because it's intangible resources, so it's not easy usually to find them. Even if we have a lot of equipment or new technology, still we have to focus on the intangible resources. So they are very rare and they are intangible, so it's not easy always to control or to manage them. So as I mentioned that, why it's more important than tangible, because when we talk about the phenomena of globalization and we have a modern technology, we cannot actually use the technology without people who can really run this technology with a different ability and different skills. So the organization, they cannot build themselves with only a new technology. And that's what Dr. Graham said about what now we have a lot of automated laboratory lines that needs another team or team with another new skills that they can run this. In 1990s, I just put this from McKinsey released the book called The War of Talent. So the organization now, they have to look for the talent acquisition and retention and development. And that's why now most of our organization, whether hospital or others, they have what they call it the talent acquisition units or department, because they are looking for the headhunting of the best from the point of view of skills and knowledge, and those people who can really drive the work in a different way, and they can really give a more creative way to run the regular business or the business as usual. So as I mentioned, that the talent acquisition or the talent actually management that needs to have the recruitment and development and retention. So all this strategy needs to be supported by money and time and effort, and this has to be an integrated part from the strategic point of view of the executive, not something that will be added. And unfortunately, to say it so, that I really sit on many of meetings that sometimes at the end of the year they said, okay, we have now we have to cut the budget. So the first thing that they think to cut the budget is really to cut the budget of the training and the development, because maybe we don't need it. We can just take it, use it for another building, use it for a construction of building or even an equipment. So as executive or as a leaders, let's say that this is not part of the budget that you can really waste it if you don't invest it on your staff. Why? Because when we talk about now the assets or the human capital assets, we talk about the productivity, and the productivity will lead to the growth of the organization and the economy. And in the middle, we are actually driving the growth of our economy, our labor or our staff. When we talk about the definition of the productivity, refers to the amount of services produced from each unit of labor input. So we are talking now about the labor unit across the country. So let's talk about the Saudi Arabia. So if we consider that this is now part of our new vision or vision 2030, that the human resource or the human capital is really now trying to take the position equal to the petrol, and this is what the Crown Prince said in many of his talk, that we want to depend on the human capital more than to actually to invest more than on the petrol. So the country workers' productivity determine the living of the standard. So our productivity is determine our level of standards with our living standard, which measured by the GDP per person and vary significantly from more than from among the countries. So we are the one who really make our living standard, not the country, not the government. Our productivity can decide this. And on the other side, we can see that the support for growing and the investment in the human capital, this is what we really found that can invest and grow in our human capital. So what is the productivity? It's so important. There are more than one component for the productivity: the natural resources, physical capital, technology, progress, and human capital. So it's more than one, but the productivity, and as we mentioned, that those are the factors for the productivity, and it's the key for to the long run growth. So when we talk about the physical capital, as I mentioned, it's like the building, the computers, the equipment, and so far, and the goods and services. When we talk about the natural resources, it's actually the nature that we have, the land, the rivers, and this is sometimes we don't control, and that's why it has actually the low score when we talk about the productivity. And the technological knowledge, which include the society understanding the best way to produce the goods and services and using the technology. And even now when we are talking about the AI or the artificial intelligence. But when we talk about the human capital, this is the most important one. So the productivity chain, it's actually starting from the education of the human capital, and then the productivity, then the wages, and then we have the welfare of those human that they are living. If we take it from another perspective of the clinical laboratory management, we can find that many of the critical success factors talk about something similar. So I'm going now from the business and the industry to the laboratory, and we found the staff is one of the major success factor that we have to talk about it as a critical success factor. So today, and my talk today is talking about the success factor as a human capital. So the investment of this means that the person would be able to get better education and better health facilities, and this would lead to an overall development in skills and efficiency of the person. So we're talking about the person himself, and the proper investment into human resources can have a significant impact on their performance, and which of course affects their competitiveness. So when we talk about the person, we know that at the end of the equation or the other side, it will be the organization, and then it will be the country, and then it will be the living standard. So this is how we can think about it. The reason I'm saying this, because sometimes I sit with the training department or the HR, and they said we don't want, for example, to train some of the people, because if they get, for example, certain certificate, they will leave the organization. You build your staff in order not to leave as part of the retention, but not to be pushed to go for another place to seek the development. People, especially in the professional level, they will not seek always the position for the money. Definitely, this is part what we are all looking for, but we are looking for the development culture, or the culture that can help us. And that's why we heard about a big organization in Saudi Arabia that it's actually, as they said, it's the choice of employer. So we need to make our organization, and I'm talking more and more about the laboratory, to be the choice of the employment, because this is how we can make our competitiveness of our organization or laboratory. So I can just make some notes here. So what we need is to develop the higher skill and formal education, training, and vital tool for improving the capacity of productivity. We need to have the proper knowledge, information, innovation, and creativity. We have to go out of the business as usual that we used to do. Especially for us working in the laboratory, sometimes we have, especially about the technologists, that they have a routine work every day. So we need really to go for more creativity of their way of doing. That's why when we become sometimes on a supervisory level, we leave the bench and we want to work on the managerial level. So we have to go for a leadership training, as Dr. Graham mentioned, because this is how we can build another line of leaders who can run the business in another way. And if we talk about the cost, so the cost is not, it's part of the investment. It's not that we are actually wasting money. And this is how we can actually drive or go create the competitive advantage for the organization and enabling the improved levels of the quality and production, increase the market productivity and direct cost. What we are saying now, it's regardless that if we are a governmental or non-governmental, we have to deal as part of the market, and especially when we talk about the human resource market. So the human capital gains the great importance is considered as the productive assets, not a costly assets. And this is, please, you as a leader, myself as a leader, that we have really to remind ourselves that the training budget or the development budget of the human capital, it's not the part of the budget that can be utilized at any time and for anybody rather than the human development. So this is especially with the end of the year as the time that we are passing now. So the indices of human capital, it can be, this is an information that can be collected about two things, individuals and the settings. So the individual, clarification is needed the empirically of the knowledge, skills, competences, and the attributes that enhance the productivity, innovation, and employability in different employment-related situations. So this is what Dr. Graham said, or I think Dr. Alayan, I think he's the one who asked about regarding how we can assess the need assessment. That now I'm going to talk about in a few minutes about this about the what we call it the occupational standard. So this is the actual real needs that we really need to assess in order to develop the proper development plan for each person or each technologist or whomever is working in the lab or in other contexts. The settings, it depends on the internal demand for the skills which is related to industry structure to guide the way in which the education and training are organized. We have really to look at the situation or the settings that the employee is working. So if he's working, for example, in the laboratory, in a very advanced laboratory like in our hospital, for example, in military hospital, or he's working in a primary health care in Riyadh or primary health care in the rural area, we have to look to the settings in order to know exactly what is the need assessment. We cannot treat everybody in the training and development equally because we cannot. The expectation from everybody is different. So when we said, for example, there's a training for the medical technologist in the clinical biochemistry laboratory, we have to look to the sitting because otherwise we are wasting the time and money. And this is exactly the indices that we look at it when we measure the outcome of the human capital investment. So as I mentioned, for the individual, the laboratorian interested in getting involved in the lab, IT should start by volunteering with the organization's validation team and taking more an interest in how lab software works. That's why when we are saying now the individual, there are different ways that they are now working. Definitely, if I start working since 20 years now in the lab, it's different from the new colleagues that they are coming with a new technology and automated laboratory. The same, as I mentioned, is again for the laboratory automation system. We need to have another set of skills and knowledge in our staff in order that they can run the business in a different way, more efficient and more competitive. Now, if we talk about what are the investment that how can we measure, it's the two resources devoted to the learning, which is time and money. Definitely, money is the money that we spend it on their training, and the time that's spent by participants in course of study. Definitely, if we say that anybody will go, for example, 1 week, 2 weeks, please consider that this is a unit that we are wasting. There is a professional leave his bench work and going for 1 week or how many hours that he's leaving their work, which will be accumulated to his colleague. So we have to measure it from these 2 points, the money and the time. I think this slide is really it's mixed. I'm sorry about this, but it's not working here good. Okay, if we can talk about the investment, and there are more than one type of investment that we can do it. First of all, as I mentioned, that it could be the training. The first is the training, and this is actually the specific or general training. As I mentioned, there are generic skills and knowledge that everybody has to know about it. Then we go to the specific, and this is starting from the general orientation in the hospital, then to the department orientation, then we'll go specifically to the job description, which is not always, especially for us in working in the lab, is the one that we have to use it for developing the training plan, because it's more than what is written in one page. It's the expected outcome from everyone. The second investment is actually the work conditions. So we have to consider that there are many conditions that need to be more modified or developed in order to get the circumstances or environment for more efficient and innovation protective aids to the staff. The third one is the investment is to improve the health condition of the employees, and this is through the quality of social program, and this is what we all care about it. So if we go for the third investment in human, it's actually to improve and expansion the business skills. So there are many things about the skills and abilities and acquisition of the competencies and ability, as well as the change in the behavior and attitude. The thing that Dr. Grams mentioned, that it's actually the communication skills of the staff, especially the people who are facing the patient, or they are talking with the medical team. So this a lot of things that maybe sometimes it's not written as part of our training plan for our staff. The benefits of investment in human capital, the first thing is increase the employee satisfaction, which will lead to more retention, and then develop the employee engagement. This is very important, and always we talk about the employee loyalty. And loyalty is not only that we want to stay in the organization, it's more than. It's actually how to drive the productivity, develop the client engagement, improve the return of investment, and improve the organizational communication, better recruitment, and greater organization culture. To me, actually, the last one is the most important thing, which is the culture of a good employability. This is what can really reflect or impact on the good recruitment and good retention for the staff and better productivity. So how the staff, the human capital education plan, this is one of the questions raised. How can we develop this education plan? There are many more than one way, actually. The regular one, what we use it's actually the periodical staff appraisal, that followed by a personnel education plan set up by the specialist of the laboratory medicine. Now, this is the one that we are talking about, the outcome expected from every individual. Then the utilized individual development plan, we have to develop what we call it the professional development plan, or PDB, for each one, and this is the responsibility of the supervisor and the director, and the same setting. Then rationale and development assignment, we have to give something more than just to tell them that you have 4 out of 5 or 2 out of 5. This is what we need to do this. And then we have to build the leadership by rotating and make them more responsible as an acting supervisors or in a managerial responsibility. So the human cap, and I'm sorry, the slide is not clear, is not complete here. If somebody from the technical can help me with this. Okay, I'm going to continue that. What is the human capital development attributes? One of them is the training and development, and then organizational development. Maybe I can move to the next slides because it's not completely up here. Okay, as I mentioned, disregarding when we talk about the training and education, it give us the knowledge. Training, it give us actually the skills. How can we do it? It's more than that we give them a lectures. This is needs actually an orientation, needs a skills and teaching, training, coaching, and counseling. This is very important for the counseling, especially with people, with adult professionals. Sometimes, especially in our culture, this like feel embarrassing that we can do counseling, but I can assure you that from my humble experience with a very high professional people, this is one of the best way that we can communicate, because we don't use to face each other, especially when we talk about the behavior and attitude. So this is one of the things, or actually one of the tools that we can use it. Then we go for the development. Development is preparing the future responsibility while increasing the capacity to perform a current job. So we have to know what is the next step for them, so they don't want to go only every day to do the same thing, and especially, and and even for the next year, they need to know that we are care about them and we are developing for them the next one. And this is different from the career planning. Career planning is something like the autopilot sitting by or set by the HR. We need to care about their managerial skills, their more actually skills that they needed to be a supervisor or leadership for the next few years that they will be in our organization. In the organizational development, okay, this is actually, and when we talk about the development, usually it's on the level of organization and the level of the staff. Organization, we have to make a very clear need assessment for the organization in order to know what we need in general to be spread among all the staff as a generic skills or knowledge that everybody has to know it. And first thing, we have to start with the general orientation. Everybody in the hospital has to know what's the scope of services of his hospital, then of the lab, in order to know who are the people, what exactly and my business, what exactly the business of my organization, whether hospital or not. It's really sometimes feel shame that when you work in a very big organization and you don't exactly what is the business that they are running there. You can hear about certain units, centers, and then you don't know exactly what they are doing, who are actually the client for this unit. So part of it is the orientation, and definitely the HR. Okay, I'm gonna finish now. The career development, as I mentioned, and this is related to the job description in order. The professional, I just want to mention here something that is very important regarding development of the training plan, that it should be in a database and it should be approved by a scientific committee. And we have to look for the CPD, which is the Certified Professional Development. This is another way of make the staff, especially in the technical part, to be more developed. I'm going to talk about the occupational standard, which is another way to develop the skills and the knowledge and attitudes needs by the staff, which is more than the job description, because this one can help us to develop the learning outcomes and the assessment in order to know exactly what could be the training program for them. And this is what we call it the functional analysis. And I put it here very in a details in these two slides. So the outcome-based approach, it's different from when we talk about the competencies. The competencies is the ability that everybody need to have it in order to do the job. When we talk about the outcomes, it's what is expected really, and then the assessment, it will be more than that poor, good, or excellent. It's something that needs to be witnessed. It's something that we have to give an assignment, or for example, if I talk about the communication, I need to have those people in a real scenario in order to know what is their actually their skills of the communication. The last three things actually I want to say about how can we improve and boost the productivity. It's about the time and talent and energy. In summary, the time, we have to look to the calendar to time actually assignment. It's more than that to have a lot of meetings and waste the time without which we can use it in another development way. The talent, people actually, the better organization who are not actually having the talent or recruit talent, but who allow that talent actually to be empowered in order to give more productivity in a better way. The same as actually the energy is how to inspire the employee to perform. I think, and I'm gonna finish this one. I can see. Okay, this is the last slide. That saving and investment. One way to raise the future productivity is to invest more current resources in the production of the capital, which is the human capital. And thank you very much for the organizing committee, for Prof. Sami Subki, and for my colleague, Dr. Nashat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctora. Thank you very much. And we will take the questions at the end of the session, inshallah. So, it is my pleasure to introduce the second speaker, Dr. Aaron Han. Dr. Aaron Han, he is currently the